This film is in our shortlist series in the festival, in the shortlist section, and that is to say it's one of the 10 films that we are playing that we think are going to be in the conversation with the Academy and with the other awards and critics groups and so forth at the end of the year. All the people are talking about the best documentaries of the year. Most of the films in the shortlist section are documentaries have already been released. This is one that actually has not been released yet. Its release will be later this year. So this is kind of a sneak preview. But we think that this, once it does get released, people will be talking about it, and the critics are going to love it, and it'll be in the action, as they say, with the awards. We're very happy to have a film by Alex Gibney in DOC NYC. He's one of the most prolific and acclaimed documentary filmmakers of the past decade, and he will be here for a Q&A after the screening. So please keep your seats and come up with some good questions for Mr. Gibney.
Please welcome the director, Alex Gibney.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Alex, can you talk about what your way into this subject was?
Well, I mean, I read the piece in the New York Times. That was the first thing. I mean, I was raised Catholic. This was an issue that was important to me. But I was wondering what, in particular, I could contribute. And when I saw that piece, it seemed very powerful, both because of the power of the story itself, but also the way the particular story related to the bigger story in terms of the cover-up. So to be able to take that intimate story and then also go all the way to the top with it, that was very important. And then also the idea of these voiceless men, making sure that they had their voices heard, and the whole idea of silence, that also seemed a very important idea in terms of making a film about the subject.
I know you screened the film in Milwaukee a few weeks ago. Can you talk about that experience?
Well, that was a very powerful experience. It was screened in a huge theater. I think it was about 1,200 seats. It was absolutely jam-packed, and there were a number of a lot of survivors, a lot of priests, a lot of, this was something that very much scarred that community. But I think the important moment was when Terry wasn't able to be there because, as you could see how affectionate he is toward his animals, one of his dogs was sick. But the other 3 survivors were there, and they stood up. They got this tremendous standing ovation. And it was really an elevating experience for them because they felt like they were finally having their voices heard. We were criticized by the local archdiocese for making the film and indeed bringing it to Milwaukee. They said it was like ripping the scab off an old wound. But the guys and most of the people in the audience seemed to feel that actually it was just the opposite. It was the ability to have their stories heard and finally recognized. So it was a powerful moment for me, anyway.
The question, if you didn't hear it, was that Cardinal Ratzinger had at one time gone after homosexuals and gay priests. If Alex, in thinking about this subject, thought that homosexuality was a part of the issue.
Well, not a part of this issue. That is to say that I think what's fundamental about this is the abuse of power and the abuse of children. In a way, that was one of the complex aspects, or not so complex, but while we felt we had to explain, for example, Weekland's scandal, which was a different kind of a scandal, where he had an affair with another consenting gay adult. That's his crime was actually the payoff, as is noted in the film. I mean, in terms of Ratzinger, there were a number of other things about his past that we didn't mention either. He also moved priests around when he was Archbishop of Munich, pedophile priests. So I would say that in this instance, what this film is about is abuse of power and abuse of children.
You talked about in Milwaukee that you got a response out of the local archdiocese there, or they spoke to the press. Are you anticipating other kind of pressure from the Catholic Church around the distribution of this film?
We're starting to see it now. It's predictable. When articles pop up very quickly responses also pop up immediately. And the Catholic World, an online publication, recently attacked the film. Again, rather in a ham-fisted way, not very clever. I think it depends on the degree to which the film becomes more widely seen. The more widely seen it is, I suspect, the bigger the counterattack will be.
The question was about access and how the Vatican, you were asking about specifically. What was that interaction like trying to get answers?
We went back and forth a number of times. I mean, there were a couple of, I wasn't interested in talking with just anybody, but there were a few key people I wanted to talk to. A guy named William Levada, who is now head of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. Also this guy, Charles Scicluna, who was actually Ratzinger's prosecutor, that brief period when he went around trying to uncover evidence about Maciel, and a couple of other people. And we tried a number of different avenues, both going in the front door, also talking to other people, including journalists like Marco Politi, who, importuned the Vatican on our behalf, but no, they were not interested. We also went to, in addition to the Vatican, we actually went to a fairly liberal cleric in Ireland named Dermot Martin. He wouldn't give us an interview, even though I would regard him as something of a hero. And then also, what's his name? I'm having a senior moment. Dolan in this country. We went back at Dolan over and over and over and over again to see if he'd give us an interview, particularly since he had just given one to 60 Minutes, but the answer was no. So silence in the house of God, as they say. Thank you. Thank you for your comment. I will say that it was, I don't have much experience in the community of the deaf, and so it was a big challenge for us to figure out exactly how we were going to shoot them. I mean, to me, the sort of uplifting part of this very dark film was the deaf survivors, who were extraordinarily gracious, but also, as you say, very expressive. But we wrestled a lot with exactly how to shoot them, and actually it ended up being quite complicated. We did a number of tests, and what we ultimately decided upon was a system whereby we shot them with actually 4 cameras simultaneously. I wanted to have a conversation with them, not just ask questions and wait for the interpreter, so I actually had to be in a separate room. We had a teleprompter over the lens of the A camera so that they could see the translator, and then I could get a simultaneous translation in the other room. Also, I wanted it to be that way because I wanted to mic them, and at first the deaf men were like, we're deaf, what are you miking us for? But I felt there was something terribly expressive in terms of the sounds that they make and how difficult it was for them to express themselves to the hearing, so that was terribly important to me. And the last thing we did was we also shot with something called a variable shutter, and that's what Steven Spielberg used in Saving Private Ryan to give that jitter, so that when you see the hands go by, you notice them more because there's a certain slight flutter to them that makes them a little bit more expressive. I think of them as heroes. I mean, to me, that was one of the compelling reasons for doing the film. It's a very grim topic, but one of the things that was so inspiring was that these guys who had such difficulty communicating, which in some ways such utter victims, never saw themselves that way. At a certain point, it switched and they became determined to get the word out, in order to save other children. And actually, at the end of the day, it also ended up saving them too, because particularly Terry talks very articulately now about how if he hadn't, it was not speaking out that began to eat him up inside. But their forcefulness in terms of going forward. I mean, imagine in 1974 a group of deaf kids leafleting around Milwaukee. It is a kind of an extraordinary. And then that guy Bob Bulger, and it's sad that Bob's not with us, but that scene of them taking that camera and going up to confront Murphy. Yeah, they're what I call, amen to that, yes. And there is, what's the name of the guy who did the Stanford prison experiment? Anyway, Zimbardo, Phil Zimbardo, thank you. He's written a book called The Lucifer Effect, and he talks about everyday heroes. That is to say, people who are not sort of heroes from on high like Martin Luther King, but everyday heroes who through their sense of strength, power, and conviction rudder against conventional wisdom to do something extraordinary, and that's what I think these guys are. That, to me, is what makes the film, lifts it up.
Before we wrap up here, I want to mention that Alex is going to be back at the festival tomorrow at the IFC Center at 3:45 for a long conversation about his work and career and recent work with New York Magazine film critic David Edelstein. But it's just a little preview to that conversation. I want to ask you on a different topic. There's an article in the New York Post today excoriating you for a TV show that's scheduled to be aired on public television tomorrow, a television show that you did about a Park Avenue address looking at the inequality gap. I want to ask you about this program, or just let people know about it who don't know about it already.
It's a film called Park Avenue, Money, Power, and the American Dream. And anyway, I was excoriated in the New York Post, I guess, 2 days ago. It looks at Park Avenue on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, and then Park Avenue just across the Harlem River in the Bronx. So it's on tomorrow night, we hope, in New York, and certainly around the rest of the country.
This film, Mea Maxima Culpa, is going to be opening theatrically at the Film Forum soon.
Friday.
A couple weeks. Friday.
It'll open Friday at the Film Forum for a 2-week run, and also in LA, I think, at the same time, and will be on HBO starting February 4th.
So you're one of the first audiences in New York City to see the film. Do tell your friends about its opening on Friday. Come back tomorrow to the festival and come back the next 4 days of the festival for more great documentaries. Thank you very much for coming. Thanks especially to Alex Gibney.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everybody.